Life comes at you fast, huh? It's been a wild, 36 or so hours now with the Super League proposal. And I thought the best idea was to take some questions, which I've been doing over the last 24 or so hours, having some good discussions on social media. And the best thing to do was talk through, what we don't know, which is so much from a fan point of view. So I've just been speaking to people, trying to gather information and reading as much as I can the last day or so. And so let's just get right into it. What is the Super League? What does it mean? Uh, you know, Beyond the initial overreaction, let's go a bit further. So by now we know this new development pits Europe's top sides against UEFA and really against leagues too. Players who play in the proposed Super League have been told they'll be banned from representing their countries in the European Championship and the World Cup, though it's becoming clearer that the Super League clubs are very confident this has no or little legal grounding. How the players feel, however, is another matter. Like what happens with Marcus Rashford if he speaks out against it, we'll see. The Super League plan offers incentives of up to £303 million per club, i.e., the 15 permanent members who join, with five other teams invited to take part every year based on qualifiers that are not yet clear. Like, we don't know what it'll take for those other teams to qualify. Clubs could play 18 to 23 matches a season, like it's really a minimum of 18 in the group stage, which would replace the Champions League and run alongside domestic leagues. None of the 12 clubs participated in the ECA's emergency meeting yesterday and have all resigned from the European Club Association with immediate effect. The format would see two groups, I should say, two groups of 10 who play home and away, with the top four from each group going through to two-legged quarterfinals, semi-finals, and a one-legged final. Pretty similar to the Champions League knockout stage now, obviously. But this also includes a playoff for the fourth and fifth place teams in the group stages, which I imagine is trying to capture what we see feel wise in a championship playoff at the end of the season. After all, we know how much money is at stake there, and there'll be similar money at stake here. In a lucrative competition where you can earn four times as much as the current UCL winner, I think that it's not a surprise that the clubs have gone for something like this. Keep in mind, the current winner of the Champions League earns less than the last place Premier League club. So Sheffield United will earn more than the last four clubs left in the Champions League from their Premier League revenue than those clubs will earn from their Champions League revenue. It's a lot to think on. These aforementioned matches would be played midweek and clubs would still play in domestic leagues. The Carabao Cup might be cast aside, and the Champions League and Europa League obviously would, but the domestic leagues and the Premier League would still remain. Serie A, La Liga, that's all still going to be there. Clubs would have rights to show four matches a season on their own digital platforms. So MUTV, Chelsea TV, Liverpool TV. They would have rights to host four games. Whether that's in conjunction with, say, a streaming service, which has been mooted for a while alongside this proposal, is not clear, but it's so early, there's a lot of information to still be uncovered. This whole competition, the Super League, will be funded by the founding clubs. And that comes with the caveat that the founding clubs will govern themselves. And when you see that, it's impossible to argue that this is not a power move. It completely corrupts any remaining moral fibre in football. The teams themselves govern themselves entirely with little to no oversight. It's not clear if there's any oversight, really, besides the people who run those clubs. I know we have conflicts in football, but it's insane to me. Now, this could potentially launch next season, with the original plan to launch in 2023, maybe accelerated by COVID. We don't know. Or maybe it was just the fact that the Champions League reform was on the brink of happening and clubs knew they had to get out. The plan remains for three clubs to join the inaugural season with the initial 12 clubs that we've seen. So if you don't know, we've got Arsenal, Chelsea, Manchester United, Liverpool, Manchester City, and Tottenham from England. We've got Juventus, AC Milan, and Inter Milan in Italy. And then we've got Atletico, Real Madrid, and Barcelona in Spain. Now, the other three clubs to be determined, but there's a plan for those three clubs to join before the first season with five additional qualifiers every season. But it is noticeable that Bayern Munich, Borussia Dortmund, and PSG have not joined. After all, German clubs, fan-owned, and it goes like their model is completely different to what we're seeing in England. And it goes against everything fans stand for. So it's understandable that they haven't jumped right in. Is it inevitable that they join? Potentially. But right in this moment, they're not dipping their toe in, whether it's about look or whether it's about genuine integrity it's hard to know. PSG have said that they feel some loyalty to domestic football, a league they dominate, and their own league and the impact it would have on all other clubs domestically. If these clubs cross the picket line and join up with the Super League, it's hard to say it's not on. Like, that much power in a vacuum is overwhelming for the proposal. Those clubs, um, currently 12, obviously expanding to 15, would share the initial £3.1 billion infrastructure grant, which I mentioned earlier as incentives, which can be spent on stadiums, training facilities, or to replace lost stadium revenue due to COVID-19. So effectively, what does that mean? It means that the clubs can spend the money however they please, or they can just pocket it the way the Glazers and Cronkies have for years at Manchester United and Arsenal. This is bottom line guys worrying about their bottom line. Let's make that very clear. Income from TV and sponsorship would favour the founding clubs, obviously, with 32.5% of the pot shared equally between the 15 founders, another 32.5% between all those Super League clubs, including the 5 qualifiers. 20% of the pot would be merit money, distributed in the same manner that we see in the Premier League, based on your finish in the competition or group if they don't make the knockouts. Then the remaining 15%, so much money when you think about it with all that division, the remaining 15% would get a commercial share based on club awareness. So it really is based on your pedigree, which is great for elite clubs like the shirt that I'm wearing. But it's so understandable why there are so many people upset at this outside of the 12 clubs. So what about financial fair play? I mean, that's something I've been huge on. A cap of 55% of revenues permitted to be spent on salaries and transfers. So that's net, 55% of revenue net. A financial sustainability group would monitor club spending. Now, it's hard to believe based on what we see with FFP, but there are teams in that group of 12 who have been strong pushers of financial fair play. So it is believable that they would drive that hard, being that those teams went after Manchester City and PSG for their breaches. So that is actually believable that they would force financially sustainable models on those clubs because it suits them and it means they're spending money that they earn only, and the owners wouldn't have to put more money in. Real Madrid and Barcelona wouldn't have to keep getting credit lines from banks. So the Super League is all about making the clubs involved worth more because it eliminates the jeopardy of being relegated or missing out on the Champions League or Europa League qualification. That's in itself a true buzzkill for football fans who live and die by these moments in a campaign which, those huge moments can determine where your season goes. And that will mean so much less domestically with the new proposal. The American owners, now I mentioned the nationality and a point I'll get to, but the American owners of Manchester United, so Joel Glazer and the Glazers, Liverpool, so John Henry and FSG, and Arsenal, Stan Kroenke and his family are the key players in this, alongside Florentino Perez, although he has distanced himself a little bit, as well as Andrea Agnelli from Juventus. They're key players. Glazer confirmed as a vice chairman underneath Florentino Perez, who will be the leader. And that is not surprising considering, just his experience in football and the power that he's held at Real Madrid for so many years in his 2 tenures. The executive committee met today, this morning, and the Premier League, Serie A, La Liga, UEFA, FIFA are staying together, which is no surprise, and they're going the hard line, which is to say that no European competition or domestic competition will be allowed for those Super League breakaway clubs, whatever you want to call them. There's a likelihood on Friday a motion will be filed to ban Chelsea, Manchester City, Real Madrid, Arsenal, and United from the European competitions they're still in, the Champions League and Europa League. What that means if they are banned, I'm not sure. Do PSG automatically win? Do other clubs come back in that were eliminated by the clubs who are banned? It's not clear. But legally, it's already been stated that there isn't much of a chance of those bans holding up. As the Super League's already filed injunctions this morning and informed of such to stop this ever taking place. This is not out of nowhere, as much as it feels like a massive shock to the average football fan. And it's been in the works for 4 to 5 years. Documents were leaked by Football Leaks, who leaked Manchester City things. They've leaked all sorts of things, so contract details over the years. So the document leaked in October 2018 was that Perez had already put together the framework for the Super League in conjunction with 11 founding clubs. So that was the original framework. The framework is very similar to what was announced now. The rumored reports in October last year of Project Big Picture were met with harsh denials by the two clubs engineering it, Manchester United and Liverpool. But this has just been a long time coming. Reform in any form, more power to the clubs. It's not a shock for those interested in like the off-field side of football, which is obviously becoming bigger and bigger. We were set for those reform announcements. I mean, they were finalised Friday night by the European Club Association, to which Agnelli is the president. He negotiated that deal and then quit on the Sunday. He negotiated on the Friday night, knowing he was going to drop out days later. We were set for those reform announcements. And they're effectively useless with the Super League coming in. The Champions League loses relevance. There's like whether you keep the tournament or not, and whether UEFA say will still be the preeminent club competition, it won't be. It's UEFA's biggest cash cow, but it'll be completely superseded by the Super League. I mean, that's the thing. So the clubs know this. Those competitions and the federations, the bodies, they need the clubs more than the clubs need them, and that's the power play here. And that would impact that loss of revenue would impact how money flows out to the entire footballing continent. This means revenue distribution and the development of the game as a whole across Europe. Little countries who rely on that money. So what does that mean for them? So that's still to be determined. The club association wanted more control. They wanted more teams and they wanted more games in the Champions League. Why have potentially 6 group stage games when you can have 18? It's a no-brainer when you think about it like that. Bigger games, more money. It's the flow-on effect. And the current maximum in the Champions League is 13. It's when you think about it in that aspect, you can understand parts of the argument, right? And stadium revenue, TV revenue, all of it, it's not comparable. Clubs wanted to wrestle governance and oversight back from UEFA and on how European competition was run commercially, how it's distributed, and it gives them total and utter control to the biggest cash cow we've ever seen. It's unfathomable in ways when you look at the financial aspects. And so how does this happen? We're talking about the Americanizing of European football at the highest level. Owners in the Premier League who have come from America, and just in general, like the ownership of sports, we've watched stable NBA and NFL franchises in particular. They've skyrocketed in value because of their respective leagues, the stability that provides. There's no relegation. You're certain of your place. The clubs would not be playing in the Champions League, the Europa League. They'd be sharing the revenue amongst themselves in the Super League. It's a game changer, and it creates a massive divide between us and them, I guess is the way to term it. In the NBA, the NFL, the teams make the decisions. Adam Silver in the NBA, Roger Goodell in the NFL, they work for the owners of those franchises. And it's almost a franchise model. And that's why fans are probably so upset, because it's so different. And, Joe, Robbo, and I will talk about it in the next part. But with those teams making all decisions, splitting the money, and doing so to stay at maximum viability financially, they do so without having to answer to a governing body. FIBA in the NBA is not close to FIFA. The NFL is its own entity. They are the most powerful. The Shield, as they call it, is the most powerful organization in sports. I think that's what they're moving towards. It's power. Power corrupts. Power and money corrupts. We know this cliche, and we know it to be true. So Europe's elite look at these ownership models from the States, and they're thinking, why not us? They generate the lion's shares of the revenue. We've built ourselves up. So let's look at Manchester United, my club. They've built themselves up over, now 3 decades. They generate so much money for football. So why shouldn't they have more? Well, what they consider to be a fair share of the revenue pie. But it's what this causes that is going to make people so mad. It creates a bottleneck to join the established elite, and it's already so difficult to break through. I mean, financial fair play was supposed to limit elite clubs, but it made it harder for other clubs to join that elite. They couldn't buy their way in the way Chelsea has, the way Manchester City has. And despite the founding club's claims that it's not a bottleneck system, that's exactly what it does. Leicester City, the best story in English football that we've ever seen, will now find it harder than ever. It took football's biggest miracle to get them to where they are now. They'll need another one to get, to establish themselves in a Super League, to be in that every year. Like, is that feasible? We don't know. Like, and that's part of it. We don't know everything all yet, so overreactions are natural, but we sort of have to be patient in that aspect. But it sets a precedent for those wishing to follow. Like, it's no guarantee, Germany and France clubs join. Leipzig have distanced themselves now, but they're not a well liked club. They don't have a massive supporter base, which is part of what gets you in the Super League. So maybe it's not them saying no, we're not going in, as much as we can't get in. We're not allowed entrance to this club. And PSG's president Nasser Al Khelaifi is the owner of beIN Sports, who broadcast the Champions League, who broadcast the Premier League. Their product, beIN's product, is compromised if PSG go to the Super League. So it's any wonder, he has turned down. Let's keep in mind though, he has turned down Andre Agnelli's open role now as chairman of the club association. There's a lot of fingers and a lot of pies. There's vested interests everywhere on both sides, and it creates a moral divide. Whether you see football as the world game, the game for all, or do we now just have to swallow a fact we've denied, that football is as much of a business as it is entertainment. And so business equally goes hand in hand with the product itself. The game itself, the world game, is a brand, it's a business. And the money gets so big, the more money involved, the bigger the business gets, the more interest that controls. But do the clubs have a duty to others? Like, the fans and media certainly believe so. I mean, the backlash has been incredible. I mean, let's look at Gary Neville. He is a hero of the people right now, thanks to his addresses on Sky Sports, the way he's gone after his own club in Manchester United, the way he's gone after the Glazers. Sir Alex Ferguson, who, has propped up the Glazers as much as anyone in his time at United, and he's now a director. He said what a shame it would be to lose 70 years of tradition because of the Super League. So it's pretty telling. I mean, founding clubs can claim the money will be shared. I mean, they can say that, but their initial explanation of this is vague, and it gave small references to how the money would be shared with no real breakdown. I suppose that's to come. If you've just signed a letter of intent, we will get more information. So it is hard to criticize in that aspect, but we have to ask these questions. There's no guarantee where the 10 billion. So they're saying there's 10 billion going to be generated in the initial period, which could be anywhere between 20 to 23 years. So 10 billion generated that will flow back into clubs. So that averages out to between 450 and 500 million. But we don't know where that actually goes. And, as the money goes up, how much will that be over time compared to what it looks like now? We're going to find out. But it does feel like a long overdue thing. It does feel like the big clubs are calling out UEFA's own vagueness. UEFA withheld close to £200 million worth of revenue from the Champions League last season for something they classified as European football. We don't actually have any idea where that money goes. Then there's also 700 million of that revenue that's unaccounted for that didn't go to the clubs last season. Now, the rest of the revenue did. The Champions League generates about £2 billion a year. So there's questions on both sides. And there's questions to be asked on both sides. We don't consider UEFA or FIFA to be some moral compass. They're corrupt as any. They're arguably the most corrupt organisations in sports, certainly of their size. So what happens next? The Super League statement makes it clear that they're willing to sit down and talk with UEFA, and that is likely the next step. I mean, this brings both parties to the table. They both have reasons to sit down. Like nobody wants it. Nobody wants the product to stop. Nobody wants the money machine to stop churning. Uh, Heavier Champions League reform is seemingly inevitable. It seems like the only way forward. And leagues and federations need the clubs more than vice versa. So again, is something that's going to have to bring people to the table. It can get messy. UEFA can call their bluff, and they might. It seems that way to start with, at the very least. Do PSG just get awarded the Champions League? Are Arsenal and United out of the Europa League? Are we straight into a Villarreal and Roma final? I mean, don't rule it out, but anything can come into play when so much money is at stake. The reform rendered useless again. The 36-team tournament we've been told about under the Swiss model, where teams play up to 10 teams of varying strength. What happens with that? But again, that reform wasn't until 2024. And with clubs losing, those elite clubs losing anywhere between 50 to 100 million pounds per year in revenue. Now, United were losing, for example, about 125 million, which is anywhere between 15 and 20% of revenue. That's a lot when you're operating as a big club. But again, this is speaking from a point of privilege. So it's really hard to say. That 2024 reform isn't soon enough. And frankly, it probably isn't good enough. The time for reform in Champions League and domestic football is long overdue. And hopefully this is the opportunity for that to be a trigger point. I mean, the Super League also clearly has a huge backer. The JP Morgan, American Investment Bank, has found financiers with infinite pockets to make this happen. And with something in the works for so long, there are a lot of power players that haven't been revealed yet. Who's going to be the streamer? Who's going to be the broadcaster? Will this go to Netflix? Will this go to Amazon, someone with unlimited pockets? I mean, they're producing a series for Lord of the Rings that cost $450 million for the first season, whereas a season of Game of Thrones cost $100 million to produce. Don't rule out that someone like them, with their own moral issues, could be involved. So, to sum up my rambling, is this the end of the world? It feels like it for some fans, and understandably so. But once upon a time, was there anything more divisive than the Premier League breakaway in 1992? The world carried on from that, and no doubt they will from this too. But a new frontier for football awaits, and we'll see what happens next. Thank you to everyone for listening, and enjoy the podcast with me, Joe, and Robbo.